Part 3. The Law. This next section once again draws on the identity of Jesus. When they demanded that he judge the woman, he did not immediately give his judgment. Instead, he did a strange thing. He did something which spoke of his identity louder than anything he could have said. He stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. In the light of the image, we can now see what it was he was writing. But in order to show it, we need to go back a step, to the time of the Exodus. When God sent Moses to the children of Israel, Moses inquired of God, "Who shall I say has sent me?" And this was God's reply. And God said unto Moses, "I am that I am." And he said, "Thus shalt thou say to the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you." "1400 years later, the same entity, I am, was born into this world and lived under the name of Jesus. Jesus knew his own identity, and when an opportunity presented itself, he used the opportunity to pass on information as to his identity to any that had ears to hear it. He said, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am." This was a straightforward statement as to his identity, equating himself with the entity I am. This was well understood by the Jews, who took up stones to kill him with. But what they didn't stop to consider was the possibility that his claim was actually true. Just suppose that the entity I am chose to be born, or was constrained by circumstance to be born, into this world as a man. How would we know that he was anything other than a man? There would be no outward sign. He would simply appear as a man. And if then he chose to reveal his identity, he might say, "Before Abraham was, I am." But then he would be executed for blasphemy. After the Israelites came out of Egypt, this same entity, I am, gave something to Moses. And he gave unto Moses, when he had made an end of communing with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tables of testimony, tables of stone, written with the finger of God. And now this same entity, the entity that called himself I am, the entity that wrote the law with his own finger, he is about to write again, and once again with his finger, this time on the floor of the temple. But what is he going to write? Is he going to alter the law in order to save this woman? No, not even God can do that. Once again, consider the binding nature of that statement. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled. What this says is straightforward. No alteration can be made to the law of Moses. till all be fulfilled. But by the time the world arrives at the day of judgment, all things will have been fulfilled. The day of judgment cannot happen until all has been fulfilled. And for those involved in the image, there is no distinction between their own time of AD 33 and the actual day of judgment. For those involved in the image, these two events are one and the same. So to them, for those few minutes while the image holds, all things have been fulfilled. So now, within the confines of the image, alterations can be made to the law of Moses. So the law of Moses, the law that was originally written with the finger of God, this could now be altered, but not permanently, only for as long as the image remains together complete. But even so, it could only be altered by the finger of God, or the finger of I am, the same finger that wrote the law in the first place. So the law, as it was presented to Moses, is not exactly the same as that which will prevail on the day of judgment. This is borne out by the judgment that Jesus gave. The law that will prevail on the day of judgment is indeed based on the law of Moses, but the law of Moses with slight amendments. And the amendments that have been written with the finger of God, or the finger of I am, are already in place on the floor of the temple. He started writing only after the image was complete, but he couldn't speak until he had written such amendments to the law as would suffice for this present situation. It is this amended version of the law which will prevail on the day of judgment. And so, whilst those people are under the influence of the image, the judgment that Jesus gave would be from this amended version of the law. So when they continued asking him, he lifted himself up and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. This judgment was not part of the law of Moses, neither was it part of the law of Rome. It was taken from the amended version of the law that was written on the floor of the temple, the law that could not be disregarded, not by those under the influence created by the image. In the next part, we're going to look at how the judgment that the Son of God gave subdued the Scribes and Pharisees.